Hi, today I'm talking about something that affects nearly every app you use, whether it's N8N, Relevance AI, VoiceFlow, or anything else that needs to talk to another app securely. This is about how apps ask for access and how they do it safely. Let's say you're building an app that wants to use Google Maps or access someone's Google Docs. You can't just open the door and start extracting information. You've got to get permission. And that's where API keys and OAuth or OAuth 2.0 come in. First, let's go through a quick definition. An API is like a menu for an application or a web application. If you go to a restaurant and you look at the menu, you choose what you want, and then the waiter goes and takes that order from the menu to the kitchen. You don't go into the kitchen yourself. The waiter, who is the API, handles that function. So an app is using an API is just saying, hey, I'd like to grab this info, please, which is placing the order. Here's the catch. The restaurant needs to know who is allowed to place the order. And that's where authentication comes in. An API key is like a library card or a hotel room key. Probably better to say a hotel room key. It's a long string of letters and numbers, and that is the secure part. That's the bit that you save. That's essentially like a password. And this is saying this app has permission to access this service. What it doesn't tell you, what it doesn't tell the service is who is using it. It just says the app is trusted. So API keys are great for public data, like when you're ordering a Google Maps search. It has a very quick setup time and there's no login required. These aren't all the use cases, and it's not always the case that you will use an API when personal information is not involved. But to keep it simple, this is going to make a distinction between API usage and the use of OAuth. The problem is, if someone finds this API key, they can still use it like it's theirs. It's like finding a wallet on the street that has money in it. Going back to this hotel key analogy, anyone who finds this API key can get in. They can get into your room because they just found it. And all it takes is, if you have the hotel room key, swipe the door, it lets you in. Let's say that you need to do something personal, like you're reading an email, someone's email, you're reading their calendar, or you're reading their private files. And the reason for that is to provide functionality like automatically categorizing what is in their email, automatically organizing their day. You might have seen the Motion app where it is automatically adjusting people's schedules. This is a use case for OAuth, and you won't use an API key for this because an API key is too broad, it's too generic. So OAuth is like a permission slip that says this app can read my Google Sheet, just this one sheet, and only until I say that's enough, stop. So in this instance, you are not giving away your password. You're giving away temporary and limited access. And some use cases that you might have seen already are logging in with Google or logging on with Facebook. And then that allows you to access personal or sensitive data. And this is also giving time limited access instead of full control. Let's compare them side by side real quick. API keys, quick and simple. OAuth is slightly slower to set up. When using an API key, you'd use a couple of headers. you would talk about the application type, and then you would provide the API key. This would be in the application that you're using, whether it's VoiceFlow, Relevance AI, or N8N. You just need to supply that API key. OAuth is a little bit slower and has a little bit more detail involved. There's a few more parameters. You need to define the amount of access that is able to be used once the permission is provided. Can it read emails? Can it send emails? Can it delete emails? Can it access the calendar? Create calendar entries, delete calendar entries, read calendar entries. And that is just scraping the surface of what OAuth can do. And depending on the type of app, will determine the type of access. If you're creating something that deals with mail, then anything that's related to a calendar is not going to be relevant for that permission and shouldn't enable that type of permission in there. OAuth is slower to set up. That's because of that granularity. API keys, don't know, don't care who the user is. It's just, do you have the password? And you get in. Do you have that hotel key? OAuth does care, and that lets you limit that access in a very precise way. Just as an example, use API keys for public, simple stuff, like looking up Google Maps. Then, if we want to store that data of looking up businesses in Google Maps and then saving them to an Excel spreadsheet to use for lead generation, for example, you might use OAuth, or you probably would use OAuth in this case, because then we're connecting the sheet using OAuth. Let's talk about what can go wrong. With API keys, they can accidentally be posted online. So sometimes API keys would get hard-coded into a code base, and then that code base is then shared on GitHub. And if that is a public repository, it gets leaked, then someone else can take that API key and present it to the server, and they can use it to send requests that basically means it's not charging to their bill. They get the benefit of the compute, they get the benefit of the usage of that API, but it's all on you. And with APIs, it's all or nothing. There's no user level control. But with OAuth, it's a little bit safer. It's still not perfect. So someone could steal the token, and they could steal that permission slip, and they could do that by stealing the token from the browser, and then they can impersonate the user. They can act like that user. And if the app asks for too much access and the user says yes, well, that's a problem. So both of these methods have their risks. They still both need to be handled with care. But to stay safe, we follow a simple security rule called the principle of least privilege. What this means is we only give access to what's needed and nothing more. So when you look at creating the scope in Google Cloud, going back to that Google Sheets analogy, we don't want to take on any more permissions than we need to do. If we don't need to be deleting emails or sending emails, don't enable that in the scope. That is better for the user. That brings more trust to the people who are providing access to the OAuth app. It reduces that risk score, and it's just more secure in general. If you don't need it, don't take it, and don't add that risk. Just remember that every time you click sign in with Google, you're using OAuth and you're giving temporary permission. You're not handing over your password. Here's the principle of least privilege that I forgot to advance the slide to. So just like in life, you don't give everyone the master key to your house. You give them access only to what they need, and only as long as they need it. And that is what OAuth is designed to do. And that is one of the foundations of principle of least privilege. So next time you click sign in with Google, just remember that your app is borrowing permission. It's not stealing it.